Good morning, afternoon or evening, and welcome to another 0AD Alpha 23 replay commentary analysis. Now, it's been a while since I actually featured myself on the channel because, well, I rarely get to play anymore, and that's due to being the father of a small baby. However, with mid-level matchups coming very soon, I thought I'd like to feature a couple of players in that mid-level range, and after playing this game, I thought, well, one of those players, that could be me. So, the game itself was quite fun to play in, and it's a fun game to watch, and it contains a number of important lessons that anyone would learn at that kind of mid-level. So, it's Wycombe versus GenghisBong, 1469 rating versus 1459, Athenians versus Macedonians. So, let's get into it. So welcome into the game. So in the left hand corner down here in the west we do have GenghisBong, as we've already established. He's playing as the Macedonians, and that will give him the advantage here with the Lancer cavalry. He's also got some good hunt close by, which is a very good opportunity. So he's basically gone for the 6 women that you'd expect, and he's sent his men off to chop wood while his other women go to get the berries going. So on these sort of maps, there's not necessarily going to be a huge amount of additional berries, so he may well not get the upgrade, although he has anyway. And as you can see, there's no additional berries there, so that's his choice though. And I'm doing very similar, so I collected a little bit of food before deciding exactly where to place the farmstead, but also gone for 6 women. And my second unit that I'm training is actually going to be cavalry, and the reason for that is because we're on the Alpine map. So the Alpine map tends to have lots of goats, and goats are, well, as you've already established, he's got loads of goats next to his base. But the good thing about goats when you've got range cavalry is that they just go up and the goats basically just stand there and die. They don't need to be shot at, so it kind of gets rid of some of the advantage that the Lancer cavalry would otherwise have. So that's the reason that I have got the extra one, although from my perspective at this point I don't know where any additional goats are. So I quite often get this extra cavalry when it's a little bit of extra defense, and also it means you clear up these chickens really quickly, and then you send them in opposite directions scouting, and you can see quite a lot of the map quite early on in the game. So that was my thinking there. So my next aim for this is basically just to establish a decent economy, as it would be the same for my opponent. Now, having said that, I had seen my opponent play a game previously where he had absolutely steamrolled his opponent, but through a mass boom, and it wasn't like those was literally I'm playing the next game against him, but I had seen him like in the previous day maybe, and he played very well. And in that, though, he had basically just trained women right at the start, and so felt that could be an area where he may be weak early on, so I'm going to want to take advantage of that. I think that's one of the key things, is to keep on top of your opponent, is if you played them before, or if you know the way that they play, then you can kind of set yourself up to defend against that and to come out the other side with a victory. So it's also at this kind of level, it's an interesting thing to look at, because what you'll potentially find, or not even potentially, you'll find is that there are people in the sort of 1400, 1500, 1600 range that have got absolutely brilliant build orders down to an absolute superb level of detail and efficiency. But what happens is, if that gets disrupted, they can panic and they just don't do what they would have liked to have done. So interestingly, he's left this guy idle for a while, which isn't good, and I don't think he's scouted much of the map. He hasn't scouted at all, and that's a real weakness. If you look at the equivalent for me, I've scouted all of my side of the map, so I know now there are loads of goats around here. I know there are goats here, and I also know where I'm going to be building out to in order to get resources. So I'm going to have slingers because of Athenians, so these additional bits of stone are very important. I've also got additional metal here, and this group of trees, so they're going to be kind of my ambitions. I've also managed to get the axe heads relatively early. I find that to be a really important upgrade. It's one of my primary aims, because it seems to speed up. I mean, it's only 15% faster lumbering rate, but it just feels like you're getting so much more wood so quickly. So I like it. He hasn't got the upgrade on the fields. I haven't got the upgrade on the fields either. Equally, you'll notice I didn't get the wicker baskets, and as we established, the reason for that is that Alpine tends not to have much in the way of additional berries. If you're on a different biome, then you might have like additional fruit trees. So Savannah, for instance, you get loads and loads of fig trees. It's well worth getting because you just can set up, basically there are fig trees all over the map. You can delay having to get to move into farming, which is much slower, until much later on. So my next thing, I want to get barracks relatively early, and now the main reason for that is that I can basically train two types of units at once. I want to be getting women primarily through here to get my farming going, but I can also then train cavalry and soldiers to make sure the front of my base is relatively secure. And that is basically what I'm going to be trying to do. So my plan is to expand quickly and try and hit him with first of all, try and do some raiding once these guys have collected the goats, just to see, because he's going to have a lot of women, how much I can set his development back. But then I also want to see if there's a way that I can actually push on from there with a phase 2 kind of assault, particularly with slingers. It's very possible to get a real like completely hamstring his economy and then push on. So he's starting to bring his troops around. He's going to come to here, so he's gone for a bit of a raid, but as you can see, these are slingers, so although he can duck in, he can't stay there for very long. It looks like he's going to take that one slinger out. He does so, but he's now run off. He's not going to be in a position to do anything more. And if we look at all the troops that I have there, it's 50-50 soldiers and women, and the pikemen, or sorry, hoplites rather, they make it completely impractical for him to attempt any kind of attack really in there, because he's going to have to go hand to hand pretty much, and in close combat he's going to be in real trouble. This, unfortunately, cavalryman's got stuck out on his own, so he's that's just the luck of the draw. He happened to run past at a point where I had one cavalryman that was out of sync with the rest. But on that point, what I've decided to do is, I know that his cavalry are over there, so why don't we try our first attack? And I'll just put him in picture so you can see what he's doing, and you'll see the nature of his attack. But this is 23 women, completely undefended. That is it's just crying out to be massacred, basically. And unfortunately, he's got his muster point set, and these 4 women are running as well. I mean, he's bringing his cavalry back, but he doesn't actually have a lot of soldiers. So he's only got 4 skirmishers here, and you can see his cavalry coming in. There, unfortunately, I put my muster pointer here, so I have got additional cavalry, but they've got left over in this right hand side, which I didn't want. But if we look at the stats now, I've now killed 18, 19, 20. He's just finding more and more of his troops going, and I'm focused pretty much entirely on this point. I'm actually leaving the cavalry where they are. I want these guys to take out as many of the women as they can, because the women are going to be chopping wood, and that's my primary concern at this point. Is he can gather as much food as he wants, but if he can't chop wood, he can't get any soldiers. So 30 down. The populations now, I've got an advantage of a population advantage of 7, but you can see he's got basically only women here, and all that time I was still training. So these 3 soldiers came out, and I've got myself into a position where I can now I've got my 5 fields, is it? Yeah, I've got 5 fields going, and now I'm going to start collecting stone. And so, having put him on the back foot, the intention now is, right, press home that advantage. I saw that he had mostly women, and I've also stopped his capacity to really chop wood, so I know that he can't produce loads and loads of soldiers to defend himself, which means his only real chance is to produce more women. And he's picked a strange choice here of going straight to phase 2, and he's not producing from this barracks, which is not very good. So I wouldn't have expected him to to do that. I would have thought he would have gone and taken his excess food, which perhaps he didn't have actually, and produced a load of women. Actually, I think that's probably what he did do, because these guys are here. So he's now taking his soldiers, and they're going to carry on collecting the soldiers, his cavalry, and they're going to carry on collecting goats. But here we go. In here, I am not producing there at the moment, which isn't very good. What's the reason for that? There's no reason for that. I'm producing hoplites from there. I should be producing from this barrack as well, and it's taken me a few seconds, but oh, I know why. It's because I am housed. This, yeah, it's one of the things. Never let this happen. That actually, this could be really, really poor. So the reason I wasn't producing is because I was housed and I was having to build these houses. So I had plenty of wood. That should never have been allowed to happen, and it actually could really pull me back. So then I do what quite a lot of players do before you get to the better level. I kind of panic, overcompensate, and now I've spent all of my wood building houses, so I've got plenty of spare capacity, but I can't actually really trade anyone because I don't have much in the way of wood. And the other problem is that if we actually look, I'm stuck on 98 wood. Look, it just goes over, but I could easily have been stuck on 98 wood, and I need to build a storehouse next to some trees and don't have the wood to do it. So that was quite lucky. But these guys, they're carrying 43 wood, but again, I don't have sufficient to build a storehouse, so I have to go and send these back over here, which is a really poor piece of play. You know, I don't need excess capacity of 29 soldiers at this point. I could have not built one of those houses and been in a much stronger position. So that was poor, really poor actually on my part. So I'm still phase 1, he's phase 2, but I do have a 21 population advantage, and because he hasn't really had much choice but to continue training mostly with women, he doesn't have much going on, although he's got plenty of spare capacity now in terms of food and wood. So quite why he's not training from this barracks, I don't know. So he's coming in now, and his plan is to attempt to try and sort of counteract my raid from earlier. He's going to try and see what he can do. Now this is where the position of these houses is really good, because it actually stops him from easily getting in to these fields, especially because he doesn't have any range. His cavalry are all what do you call it? Are all lancers, so they've got no way of actually attacking these women without first trying to get past all of these people. So he quickly runs. So what he's actually achieved there is a small amount of idle time, but not really anything of any great concern. I've still got 30 population advantage, and I'm building a second barracks in an attempt to get out to these trees. And he's leaving his cavalry there. When you consider that there are goats here, where else are they? There's a couple of deer there that he'll be able to take, and he's got a few goats in the middle. He should really be using them for hunting or something. In fact, are they? Yeah, they've got a little bit of food, and they are starting to hunt, so they're not a complete waste. But even though he's at phase 2, I'm not particularly concerned at this point. And what I'm trying to do is get a couple of barracks, and I'm going to phase 2. I've been collecting stone, so my aim is really, having got the stone upgrade, I should really get the wicker baskets as well, but to now start producing as many slingers as possible, with the idea that I'm going to make a push. And this was one of the, as I've already mentioned, I think, one of the ideas that I had at the start of the game. I know that he's going to have a lot of women, or I think he's going to have a lot of women. I've tested that thing out with my push early on my raid at around 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes, and that raid has meant that he's had very little choice actually but to continue producing women, because it's the only way that he can get that population advantage back on his side. So he's 29 soldiers behind. I'm keeping these guys here. I've added a handful of hoplites and this little tower, and the idea is it's really the way that he's been trying to come in. If he tries to come in again, I mean, he came in one, he's going to have to be facing this tower, he's going to be able to facing these hoplites or these guys, so he's not going to be able to take much out. So what I've gone for is now very quickly phase 2 building. First one is a market, because I'm going to want to buy some metal. I don't have a lot of metal. He does. I don't know quite why he's got so much metal, really. He doesn't need it. And if we have a look, he's not really mining a lot. Has he? No, he hasn't. I thought maybe he'd purchased some metal, but he's just been collecting metal. I don't really know why, unless it's for upgrades. And it is in part, at least. But I'm just making sure I don't get housed. And these 2 barracks and the civic centre are going to continually produce, and try and get my population really, really booming now. Also, get the blacksmith, because that will give me access to a few upgrades. And what I really want is to make sure that my soldiers, when I make the push, are going to be in the strongest position possible to withstand his attacks. Now, this is an interesting thing that I noticed from him. He pulled his cavalry over here. They could be collecting these goats. They're not. They actually, I think they just sit there for the rest of the game, which is a bit of a strange choice. But anyway, you can see both of us have started doing our what do you call it, bartering from our markets, and it's for that reason actually I think that the market is the most important phase 2 building. It gives you potentially such an advantage if you can get your phase 2 buildings going. So once you hit phase 2, get the market, get the best prices on those mineral resources to give you a kickstart. You know, if you can then get all the upgrades, I'm going to collect things as quickly as possible. I'm only 91 metal short actually from being able to get this quilted body armor. I don't know quite why. I've got loads of people collecting metal, so I should really be able to get that. And you can see I'm grouping up my soldiers. I've got these guys and also these guys that are over here. So I've basically left, let's just count them, about 30, well not about, I've left 36 people collecting, and he's really got, so sorry, 30 people collecting wood, and he's got a load of people collecting wood, but they are basically all women. So he's got men who are actually involved in mining, and he's seen my attack coming, but he doesn't know the full extent of it. And he's lost a couple of his soldiers, but this, as you can see, he's going to lose a few more of his troops. But once I've kind of fought off his initial defense, you'll see that my soldiers are all nicely grouped up together. He's kind of, they're a bit ragged, and in doing so, that's why he's lost so many of them. If they'd all come as a unified block, they would have actually been in a much stronger position to defend themselves. But as you can tell, the first thing I go after is the market, and the reason for that is I don't want him to be able to kind of do any bartering to improve his economic situation. If he's not got a lot of people collecting wood, but he's able to continue collecting food, I don't want him to be able to swap that food for wood. I don't want him to be able to swap that food for stone or whatever to try and get himself to be able to build better soldiers. So that was my first aim. So even though he's gone to the city phase, I've taken out his ability to change his his economic makeup easily, and the next thing I want to do is stop his ability to repopulate. So if we look, he's got only 24 soldiers there. I've clearly got way more over here. Yeah, I've got 54, and I'm trying to take out this barracks, which again will make it more difficult for him to produce soldiers. Unfortunately, it's taking a little while, and while that's happening, these guys were getting killed. So again, just get the soldiers firing and get as much of an attack I can. Unfortunately, the people on this very end seem to be just about at this point just about staying outside the range of the tower, but they have been going in and out of that range. And you'll be able to see that I'm continually here producing soldiers from 2 barracks, and I've decided to start producing a 3rd barracks just there. But my aim with that is that I want to be able to repopulate even more quickly. So he's got plenty of food and wood, but he needs to stop me from advancing, so it's making it more difficult for him to actually get an army together, because if he were to try and train, you know, the 5 or 10 soldiers that he wants to in one go, he's probably going to lose the barracks. So this is, I think, as close as he's going to get to getting me in trouble. He's got quite a few soldiers, and he is just, as I say, he's producing one. He's not really able to keep his economy moving. These guys that are up here have got quite a long walk. I mean, some of the women are walking a long way to collect wood, and he's got very, very few soldiers, you know, just 7 there. So he's tried to produce slingers. He was able to do so. He still does have some stone, but he's not really using it for anything, and he's decided instead to use that to build another barracks, which is actually a very sensible idea. He needs to be able to reinforce as quickly as possible. So I'm going to get my hoplites to try and attack his slingers, and that they've forced the slingers away, so he's got no covering fire now, and instead my soldiers can just plow on and really look to take out this barracks. So they are doing exactly that. They're focused on the barracks. It is coming down, and they're just trying to occasionally take out a handful of his supporting soldiers. So the barracks is the key thing for me. I'm hoping to take it over, actually, and I just keep on reinforcing. As you can see, these guys just coming through. So from the civic centre I'm producing hoplites, but from the 3 barracks that I now have, I'm producing slingers, and I'm just keeping them coming. And he's just finding it increasingly difficult to stop this onslaught. He's having to produce 1 at a time from these things. So these guys are just, as soon as you're producing 1 at a time, you're basically, unless you're producing from 10 or 12 barracks, it's of no use. They're just, the soldiers are going to run out 1 at a time, get hit by an absolute mass of projectiles, and they never make it even into the battle. So these guys are trying to take out the what's it called, the temple, and these guys are just about to take over there, and because of that he resigns. So yeah, that was the game. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned a little bit about a phase 2 push, and about how to take on someone who is booming. It's about disrupting their flow, because yeah, they are they're keeping their disrupting their flow and stopping them from actually getting into the position that they want to. It is quite difficult to deal with. I mean, you can see here, if that hadn't happened shortly after, I was starting to get into trouble, because I had become too focused on producing. And if I look, well, actually I've got 5,500 wood, so I doubt I would have noticed that was in trouble for a while. But these guys should have been moved to collecting. I suppose that's what you learn when you're an even better player. So once you get to the very top, then you are able to be like, oh, here we go. And you can see here I also didn't set the muster point for this barracks, so they were just dumping soldiers here to no use whatsoever. So let's go and have a look at the stats. So you can see it's a comprehensive victory in terms of total score. My economy was much better, my military was much better, fight activity ratio was actually much the same, well, it was exactly the same, and exploration score was much for muchness. If we look at the charts, you can see I had an early advantage, and that's the advantage that comes from being able to produce slingers. They do help to get an early military if you can use them. And I don't think, no, there was a point where we had level, but there was no point where he was ahead on the total score. I've just realized, sorry, that's not military, that's just about our total score. So I was ahead probably from exploration. In fact, it was from exploration. And see here, he had a slightly better military, going all the way to the point to basically where I pushed, and absolutely then skyrocketed while he was unable to keep up. Economically, again, he started better, and that's because basically the reverse of what I just said about the things. I started producing a few soldiers. Defensively wise, he kept producing basically women, and that's why his economy was marginally better. But then once it actually came to it, so had our rush, or the rush kind of attack thing was around here, and you see that's when it switches over and I start to get into the lead. If we have a look, we both made plenty of use of market. In fact, we didn't make as much as I thought. I just bought some metal at the start. He bought a little bit of metal, but loads of stone. And in terms of units, he lost 125, I lost 87. And buildings, I had more. And yeah, that was that. So a 1.54 kill death ratio as opposed to a 0.67. And that is the game. So I hope you enjoyed that and you've learned something, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Adeus.